So I wanted to look at Ronald Reagan and really analyze how his policies impacted homelessness in the United States. Now, Reagan is viewed by many to be one of the greatest presidents in American history, but when you really dive in, you realize that there's definitely controversy with some of the things that he passed and its effects. Mainly homelessness is what we'll focus on, but homelessness increased drastically under Reagan. Let's go ahead, we'll read some articles, watch some videos, and dive into this.
In America, Reagan failed to understand mental health as a real medical condition that needed to be researched, and thus decided research was not worth funding. Reagan's leadership led to the mass deinstitutionalization of hospitals. As a result, many mentally ill patients, along with drug addicts, were discharged and pushed into housing units. Overnight, towns flowed with hundreds of mentally ill. Owners often took advantage of confused residents, cheating them of their money. When the time came for gentrification of these rundown towns, the mentally ill, who could not pay the increased rent, were forced out of their homes into the streets.
They say first they suffered through emptying and closing of hospitals. They say then the dumping of their relatives onto the streets. Then they had the withdrawal of funds for community-based programs, they say. They say in Illinois, because of a withdrawal of $18 million, Governor Thompson has cut from mental health programs. They're now faced with the stoppage of research. What would you tell these people?
Keep in mind, a lot of people that are homeless today, they have mental health problems. So the idea of just deinstitutionalizing so many people, cutting funding for mental health services, makes complete sense. That would lead to an increase in homelessness. Now, there may be exceptions, but most people aren't homeless because they're choosing to be. A lot of them have mental health problems, and they don't have maybe the same family safety nets that others who struggle with mental health have. They don't have family members that are maybe taking them to get medication, or that are allowing them to live with them after breaks. And so it makes complete sense that you would have an increase in homelessness right at this time, and it hasn't improved a whole lot.
Well, I would look into all the things that the charges they've made there to find out if all of these things are true and whether the financial things that they mentioned there are the reason for those cases. I would think Governor Thompson would like to see that letter.
While the 1980s brought a surging increase of the homeless population, there was also a brief period of awareness. Advocates such as Mitch Snyder fought for the rights of homeless, hoping they would be treated as citizens.
For years I've been listening to honorable and sincere people telling me a number of things. Like it'll be good for America if we deregulate, if we stop controlling those corporations, because then everything will move smoothly. And what moved smoothly was $300 billion through the fingers of the people that run the S&Ls.
Today, the consequences of Reagan's actions and inaction remain. Skid Row, located in California where Reagan first took up leadership, houses the most densely populated group of homeless people in the United States. Today, roughly 25% of the U.S. homeless population have a form of mental illness, and around 11% are veterans. But there is hope. During this age of technology and social networking, millennials tend to have a greater awareness of the hope.
Okay, so the article talks about how Reagan's rhetoric basically made the poor look bad. He would talk about welfare queens, people who had all these basically pseudonyms, all these addresses and social security cards, who's making all this money. Journalists go to investigate, they realize like that's not really a thing. Like he made it appear like it was. It highlights right here, the most dramatic cut in domestic spending during the Reagan years was for low-income housing subsidies. Reagan appointed the housing task force dominated by politically connected developers, landlords, and bankers. Task force released a report that called for free and deregulated markets as an alternative to government assistance. Okay. First year in office, Reagan had the budget for public housing section 8 to $17.5 billion. For the next few years, he sought to eliminate federal housing assistance to the poor altogether. Okay, this highlights how initially in the 80s, there were a lot more units than there were people. So there was a surplus of at least like 300,000 roughly. So 6.5 million households, and then there are 6.5 million units with only 6.2 million households. And then it highlights how the number of units falls, but then the number of basically people needing them rising to the point where we have a 3.3 million units. So that's going to increase homelessness right there. Okay, highlighting that 1980s, it swung to 600,000 on any given night, 1.2 million over the course of a year. Many were Vietnam veterans, children, and laid-off workers. Reagan defended himself on Good Morning America, in which he said that people who are sleeping on the grates, the homeless, are homeless, you might say by choice. Okay, so understand for so many homeless people that's not actually the case. There's often mental illness, drugs. Some people will argue that drugs are the choice, but what we need to remember is that there are so many people that drink alcohol and that do drugs that don't become so addicted that it's debilitating, but there are a small percentage that do. So someone could make the claim that we should try to help those people. We should try to make sure they get the treatment they need, that we're making sure people get the medication that they need. So again, Reagan, people praise him often, like, oh, he helped bring the Berlin Wall down, so many great things. And I'm not going to say he was the worst president, but there's definitely nuance. You have to look and try to objectively analyze and see the ways in which he did harm some poor people, in which he did increase homelessness, and in which some of his policies still have an impact today. Thanks for watching. I'll have more coming out on history, politics,